In the glamorous world of hip-hop and celebrity culture, few names have shined as brightly or fallen as hard as Sean Diddy Combs. He was the king of bad boy records, a billionaire mogul, a fashion icon, and a cultural powerhouse. From producing chart-topping hits in the 90s to launching luxury brands and mentoring artists like the notorious B.I.G., Diddy defined an entire era of music. But behind the fame, the mansions, and the private jets, prosecutors say a darker empire was being built, one fueled by control, manipulation, and abuse. This is the story of how one of music's most powerful figures went from mogul to inmate. This is the fall of Diddy, a deep dive into the controversy, the trial, the verdict, and what's next for one of hip-hop's most controversial legends. Sean John Combs was born in Harlem, New York, in 1969. Raised by a single mother after his father was murdered when he was just 2 years old, Diddy often spoke of hardship and hustle. He attended Howard University, where he began organizing campus parties that would shape his future in entertainment. By the early 1990s, he was working at Uptown Records, and later founded Bad Boy Entertainment in 1993. With artists like Biggie Smalls, Faith Evans, Mace, and 112, Diddy built a hip-hop empire. He was charismatic, stylish, and ruthless in business. Hit singles, million-dollar music videos, and high-profile relationships made him a household name. But fame came with controversy, and not for the first time. In 1999, Diddy was arrested after a nightclub shooting in Manhattan left 3 people injured. Though he was acquitted, the case introduced the public to a pattern. Diddy's world often seemed to orbit violence, secrecy, and scandal. For years, whispers circulated through the entertainment industry, rumors of parties that went too far, secret freak-offs, and questionable relationships with young women. Many dismissed them as tabloid gossip. But in 2023, everything changed. Singer Cassie Ventura, who dated Diddy for nearly a decade, filed a bombshell lawsuit accusing him of rape, physical abuse, and sex trafficking. Her 35-page civil complaint described years of violent behavior, beatings, coercion, and being forced into sexual encounters with male sex workers while Diddy filmed. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the music world. Within 24 hours, the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, reportedly in the tens of millions. But instead of quieting the storm, it only emboldened others. Within months, dozens of new civil lawsuits were filed. Models, producers, assistants, and even men came forward, all painting a horrifying picture of manipulation, drug use, and control. By late 2024, federal investigators were involved. And soon, the world learned what had been happening behind closed doors for years. In March 2024, federal agents raided Diddy's mansions in Los Angeles and Miami. Helicopters, armored vehicles, and FBI agents swarmed the luxury properties in what became one of the most dramatic celebrity takedowns in recent history. Agents seized electronic devices, surveillance footage, and evidence allegedly connected to human trafficking and narcotics distribution. Diddy, who was traveling at the time, denied all wrongdoing, calling it a witch hunt. But months later, in September 2024, a federal grand jury indicted Sean Combs on charges including racketeering, sex trafficking by force and coercion, transporting individuals for prostitution, and obstruction of justice. The indictment painted a disturbing portrait of a man who used his fame, money, and influence to exploit others, what prosecutors called a criminal enterprise disguised as a lifestyle brand. The trial began in May 2025 in federal court in Manhattan. Prosecutors brought in a mountain of digital evidence, text messages, surveillance videos, and testimony from more than a dozen witnesses. Cassie Ventura's testimony became the emotional centerpiece. She described being beaten, drugged, and forced into sex acts with strangers while Diddy filmed. Others, former bodyguards, assistants, and women from his alleged parties, testified about what they called freak-offs, where Diddy would allegedly pay for escorts, distribute drugs, and record the events for his personal collection. The defense painted a different picture, that the relationships were consensual, the parties were adult entertainment, and the charges were misuse of the Mann Act, a law originally meant to combat prostitution across state lines. After weeks of graphic testimony, the jury began deliberations. On July 2, 2025, the verdict was read. Sean Diddy Combs was acquitted of the most serious charges, racketeering and sex trafficking, but found guilty on 2 counts of transporting individuals for prostitution. The courtroom fell silent as the judge explained that, while prosecutors failed to prove a criminal enterprise, they did prove that Combs had arranged and funded travel for women to engage in paid sex acts. It was a partial victory but a devastating blow to the music mogul's empire. In October 2025, Diddy returned to court for sentencing. Prosecutors requested over 11 years in prison, citing the emotional harm done to his victims and the message of accountability needed for high-profile offenders. The defense argued for leniency, just 14 months, time served, emphasizing his cooperation, remorse, and contributions to music and charity. But the judge disagreed. On October 3, 2025, Diddy was sentenced to 50 months in federal prison, fined $500,000, and given 5 years of supervised release. He wept as he apologized in court, calling his actions disgusting, shameful, and sick. He promised to undergo counseling and substance abuse treatment. The judge acknowledged his remorse but stated, "Good deeds do not erase harm. You had power and privilege and you abused both." Diddy was taken into custody immediately. He has since requested to serve his sentence at FCI Fort Dix, a low-security prison in New Jersey, where he can join a drug treatment program, RDAP, that may shorten his time by up to a year. In October 2025, Diddy returned to court for sentencing. Prosecutors requested over 11 years in prison, citing the emotional harm done to his victims and the message of accountability needed for high-profile offenders. The defense argued for leniency, just 14 months, time served, emphasizing his cooperation, remorse, and contributions to music and charity. But the judge disagreed. On October 3, 2025, Diddy was sentenced to 50 months in federal prison, fined $500,000, and given 5 years of supervised release. He wept as he apologized in court, calling his actions disgusting, shameful, and sick. He promised to undergo counseling and substance abuse treatment. The judge acknowledged his remorse but stated, "Good deeds do not erase harm. You had power and privilege and you abused both." Diddy was taken into custody immediately. He has since requested to serve his sentence at FCI Fort Dix, a low-security prison in New Jersey, where he can join a drug treatment program, RDAP, that may shorten his time by up to a year. The impact on Diddy's brand was immediate and devastating. Streaming numbers for his music fell by more than 80%, sponsors pulled partnerships, and multiple honors were revoked, including his Howard University honorary degree, New York City Key, and Miami-Dade Diddy Day. Celebrities and fans alike were divided. Some, like 50 Cent, openly mocked his downfall. Others expressed heartbreak, saying the man they admired for decades had destroyed his own legacy. Meanwhile, the lawsuits keep coming. Over 50 civil suits remain active alleging sexual assault, exploitation, and emotional abuse. Each threatens to drain the fortune Diddy spent a lifetime building. His attorney has vowed to appeal the convictions, claiming the judge acted as a 13th juror. But legal experts say overturning the verdict is unlikely. Sean Diddy Combs once said, "Can't stop, won't stop." But now, the world is watching as one of the most powerful men in hip-hop faces the consequences of his own empire's darkness. From Harlem to Hollywood, from platinum plaques to prison walls, his story has become a symbol of how far success can fall when power, fame, and ego spiral out of control. Whether he rebuilds or fades into infamy remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: this scandal has forever changed the landscape of hip-hop and how we view its icons. This has been Celebrigist. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime and celebrity justice stories. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for our next deep dive.